Hi, I'm Cherie Lindbergh, and welcome to Elevated Life Academy, where we share real stories of healing, hope, and transformation. Tune in to hear how everyday people are rising above and lighting the way for others. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Elevated Life Academy, and I am your host, Cherie Lindbergh. And we have Mari with us today. In just a moment, I'm going to invite her to introduce herself. And we just decided that we are going to the deep end of the pool today. We are going to have conversations of depth. So stay tuned and let's see where that takes us. So welcome, Mari.
Hi, thanks, Cherie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, tell our listeners a little bit about you, and then let's see where we go.
Sure. So my name is Mariya Javed-Payne. I am a multimodal practitioner, kind of based in the intersections of trauma therapy and brain spotting, um, plant medicines, psychedelic medicines, and ancestral healing, shamanic healing, and intuitive healing work. I also operate within all of that from a really decolonial and kinship based practice and
Mhm.
approach to life. I would consider myself an animist and um, spend a lot of my time swimming in the deep end of the pool and learning what that means. I got uh, early life kind of threw me in there. So I've been passionate about learning about different healing approaches from all over the world and um, observing from different perspectives the mechanism and or frequency of what it means to heal and learning about that from a body perspective, a somatic perspective, spiritual perspective, and a uh, perspective of the psyche, and really understanding the terrain of the psyche as well. um, so yeah, I teach phase one, phase two brain spotting trainings internationally. I have uh, some other workshops that I do related to ancestral healing and psychedelic work. I'm a breathwork practitioner, and I do, um, I don't know, uh, a blend of things. But my main goal in every space that I get a chance to host or be entrusted with is to really see people in the fullness of who they are and work with that. And so I appreciate modalities and ways of relating to one another that cut through the fluff and cut through what's unconscious and helping people to become more and more conscious, aware, and um, on their path to growth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot there. So let's unpack a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, how did you come to this? Like in your, I'm sure you had your own journey. So talk a little bit about, how you've come to these understandings of the work that you're here to do on Earth.
Mm. Yeah, I think like many of us, we might have a difficult path or a seismic event that might happen in our lives. Mine wasn't like one event, but it was about a decade of um, active addiction. So my story is I'm originally from India. My story is one of, you know, coming from a family of immigrants. So first generation, I moved to the United States when I was 6. Before that, I lived in India, France, and Brazil. Uh, so I moved around quite a bit to several different continents, even. And I came from a Muslim family from northern India, and that process of transition into the culture here, Western culture, Eurocentric culture, w- was really, really traumatizing, to be frank. I didn't know that then. That's only really come into my language and awareness to be able to frame it or name it like that in the last maybe 10 years, but um, that that separation of you and your people, your land, the land that your body comes from, your blood, comes from, and watching your parents navigate systems, racism, poverty,
Mhm.
oh, governmental things and work systems while trying to raise, two children, learn a language, learn how a credit card works or how to drive a car, in their late like 30s and 40s, pretty difficult.
Mm.
And I absorbed a lot of that, so I carried a lot of grief, I think, that my parents weren't able to be with or knew how to, among other things. And kind of one of those over responsible type of people. In case there's folks listening who are into astrology, I'm a Capricorn stellium and a Taurus rising, so I can hold a lot. And um, I by the time I got to age 13, my cup was runneth over. Like I didn't have any more space in my nervous system. Um, Nor did I have the relational support or tools. And so I navigated into drugs. And that was like, you know, gasoline and a match. And I was one of those people where I went 0 to 120 like quick, and I think, by age 15, I was snorting cocaine. And by age 17, I was injecting drugs. And that lasted, until I was about 21. So that dark that dark realm, really, that was my first experience really entering that. And, looking at it now from a soul perspective, it was quite a teaching, it was an internship, if you want to call it that.
Mhm.
So my life's, a lot of my work now is being able to sit very comfortably in dark and light spaces, um, and actually seeing that they're connected.
Mhm.
So yeah, 8 years of, every horrific thing you can think of that happens, and, high level of addiction and abuse happened. And it's, loved ones dying and overdoses and, um, yeah, all of the things. So I'm grateful to be alive. Um, and then when I got sober at age, it was 20, age 20, almost 21, I I had got I woke up, so to speak, and I was willing to do whatever it took at that point to put my life back together. And when I, so-called woke up, it's like coming out of a big fog because you've been gone from your own body for almost 10 years and then some, with your, not that I was so embodied beforehand. Um, and when I came to, I was really physically ill. So I had been hospitalized for an infection I had had from my drug use in 2009. And I remember like not feeling well in that last year of using, but I didn't know. You just don't know. You're totally out of it. So, but when I tried to get sober and was cleaning myself up, I was constantly ill. Like, so that's led to the next 16 years of my life in sobriety, managing multiple chronic illnesses that have, in a lot of ways sidelined uh, a lot of my creativity and lightness, and then still having the grit and the drive to be, really purpose driven and building what my heart and soul is, carrying out,
Mhm.
needing to carry out in this lifetime. So that's a short story version of, a lot of the background. And I guess what I'll say is that when you're really unwell and you've been unwell most of your life, mentally, physically, psychically, you have the option to like stay in that, give up or try to find everything you can to get better. And that is what's led me to having the multimodal. Again, it's an internship, on a soul level, it's an internship. Um, Being nudged into different types of healing paths to heal myself, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then turning that into something that can be reciprocal and about giving and receiving and being of service to those that are, in your orbit. So yeah, that's what has led me here.
Yeah. Well, I hear that. And I also hear that you're still on the journey, just like all of us are.
Forever.
And yeah, forever. And that you're taking what you've learned for your own healing so that other people can walk in your footsteps and you're supporting them to be able to do their own healing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is the way of many people who
Hmm.
know, work with their own wounds, and then to do that cleanly, so it's a really big responsibility. Um, and that's why it's continuous healing.
Right.
You never arrive. I used to wanna, I used to think at some point,
Oh, yeah.
really,
I'll try my checklist. I can get these all done.
yep,
Yes, I remember.
I burned that away a long time ago, but there was a point in time where the suffering is so much, really, like, I just want it to be over,
Yes.
and now there's more space, so it's like, yeah, you can be on a journey and
Yeah. Yeah.
love
So
yourself.
let's talk about this light and darkness because as healers, I mean, that is we need to learn how to hold both of those. And I think our ability to attune and be grounded while in both are really important because people will borrow our central nervous system to go places that maybe they normally couldn't go.
Mhm.
So, your thoughts on that, being able to hold the light and the darkness.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think that there's just so much I could say about it. Trying to find an inroad right now. The main the main impetus I think I have in the work that I offer and spaces and containers that I make is um this a belief that both sides exist, and it's a complicated topic, to talk about light and dark, but it's a polarity, and coming from the frame also of non-attachment, unconditional love and sovereignty. So those are some of the basic principles that I operate from, and moving out of judgment, moving out of fear, moving out of rejection. So I see a lot of spaces that bypass, um, and can't get to the root balls of things that people might be, disconnected from in themselves. And even like the word dark and light, I'm a little hesitant about even just the phrasing because I think we have connotations around that, and it might activate things related to religion and, uh, organized, historically organized ways of thinking
Yeah.
about dark and light. I mean to talk about it from a more neutral connotation, but I believe we all have light and dark, aspects of us,
Mhm.
and that's part of being here in the school of Earth, which is a teaching planet, you know. So I believe there is a contract with Earth, with darkness and lightness and nature, who is a master teacher. And um, so we come here to learn. We come here to grow.
Mhm.
And some darkness is necessary,
Mhm.
for that learning. Um, so I really try to teach it and model that from a place of neutrality as best as we can, and giving folks, the courage to be able to look at themselves and still gaze at them with the eyes of love. when they're in those parts of themselves, or afraid to touch those parts of themselves. So
Mhm.
I think that I'm rambling a bit, but
No, I'm following you. I hope our listeners are. I mean, um, we all another way of describing it, and again, I agree with you that we got to be careful because we got this Western culture that has certain languaging or like you said, religious purposes. Some people might see it that way, but being as neutral as possible. You're talking about, aspects of ourselves that maybe that are suffering, that hold pain, that held the traumas, the shadow part of ourselves that learned to protect ourselves and adapt, but not in a healthy way. I mean, those are just some other languaging that I'm hearing.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's like healing the ego, not saying egos are dark necessarily, but the ego part of us is less conscious. So perhaps that's one other way to describe it.
Thing. Yeah. Well, and that can lead us, and again, this is where the non-judgment comes from. When you go really deep into the roots, I think people get shocked and surprised what's in there, especially when the lineage starts to come forward. And the work of, like Thomas Hubble, what he's doing, and then, um, you know, the ancestors start to come. So can you talk a little bit about that, whatever you're comfortable sharing?
Totally. Yeah. So, working at the depth level, deep root work means,
Mhm,
root, literally, you're going to go into addressing intergenerational and ancestral and collective consciousness patterns, even. And that's a big part of my work is um, helping not just those that are here in the physical and in the human realm, but also helping those that are on the other side, and our calling on our wise and well ancestors to support the work that we're doing. So ancestral healing is an ancestral worship or reverence has been a part of us since time immemorial. And in the West, it's forgotten.
mhm,
And I think it's contributing to a lot of the suffering that I see people have in my office and in my workshops and groups and spaces. And yet there's no container or context, to even talk about that or understand it like that. We come in the US anyway from this belief system of individualism and self. And, I come from a collective culture. So to
mhm,
me, I've I've definitely been disconnected from my ancestors and my relatives, which has been excruciating for me. And um so while I haven't had, been able to keep that connection with them, because of living here, I've never not felt that. And I
mhm.
think for a lot of European and Western, cultures, it's more forgotten. So a big part of this timeline that we're in right now, this massive, I feel massive shift that is happening. People are in droves really seeking a lot more healing than I've ever seen, which is great. There's also, a lot of suffering, and we're aware of that suffering. And when our ancestors are not well, when they're not well, when they pass on and there isn't a sense of completion at some level, that that is going to have some kind of dissonance in
Mm.
those that are living. So
It's in the field.
totally, yeah, it's in the field. I see it as like braids, and
Mhm,
we're braided through our lineage with all four of the
mhm,
bloodlines going all the way to the stones and the rocks and the minerals which is our oldest ancestors, have become part of Earth again. And so there's strong, strong, strong cords that just are a part of being a human being, connected to those lineages. And when there's harm, when there's war, when there's trauma, when there's, relational rupture, unless that's completed or brought to some form of resolution, we are carrying that at,
Mm-hmm.
at some level in our bodies.
Mm-hmm. And then we repeat it.
And then we repeat it because it's seeking healing, it's seeking that completion. So for me, all work is ancestor work. I don't even see like someone coming in with individual, for individual therapy or an individual session. I don't see that as that. It's like they come in and their ancestors are coming in and like the whole family comes in. Oh. And we work at it in that frame. It's a lot busier in there. Yeah. Need a lot of chairs. Um, but all work is actually ancestral work. We need to remember that frame though.
Yeah.
And there's many things that we can start to do to remember again. And it's not just remembering like the hard stuff. This is where you also get your resources, like
Mm-hmm.
the gifts that are in your bloodline that you get to access those too. And I'm a believer that people change even after they're gone. It's like death does not mean person stays static. So healing can still be done between realms. I've, been a privileged participant in a lot of that kind of healing. So I think we're in a time of great remembering, and our ancestors are supporting. Many of our ancestors are, and many of them also need help.
Right. Right. Um, I'm just having a lot of visuals as you're talking, so I'm trying to figure out what would be the next, line of questioning.
What do you
Um,
see?
well, I'm seeing um souls. I'm seeing a bunch of souls around a client. Like when you say they're coming into the office, I'm seeing, all the different souls that have impacted them. And I'm thinking about, in particular, um, I've worked with clients where during that process, they start to realize their depression is not their depression. Like the depression that they're carrying, they realize mom had it, grandma had it, great grandmother and great great grandmother had it. And when they start to be able to access that and clear that kind of imprint with inside their body, how the freedom, the healing, that can happen. And as that happens for them, that can also happen in the generational line.
Absolutely. Yeah. Backwards and forwards.
Yes.
Totally.
So talk about some of the methods that you use to be able to do some of that work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would say it's a mix. So when we have like a 5-day ancestral healing workshop, we do a blend of things that are in the physical realm. So like honoring practices of the land that we're on, and calling in the wise and the well folks that are interested in supporting. And that work starts months prior to the
Mhm.
actual container. Um, First thing that I have folks do is make a mandala. We make it together on the first day, and um, you're bringing something, a natural item that represents one of all four of your bloodlines, and we weave that. So we weave that into a mandala. And this is coming from some of Daniel Foer's work from ancestral medicine. Uh, and I cannot tell you like how charged that mandala.
You can imagine.
40 different bloodlines choosing to be together, in that space. And each one always looks different, how it gets created. And there's always like messages in that. Um, so it remains as a like an altar or a place of remembrance throughout the week. And then when we're actually doing the work, it's um it's shamanic, it's mediumship, it's brain spotting, it's body oriented, and uh you know, things start to show up. So it's like teaching like both for like how to do the healing work for yourself, but also teaching you how to carry that work forward. It can look like attachment work. It can look like um, really like drama therapy in a way. So think, family constellations a bit. It's a blend of things that over the years have kind of put together. But being able to communicate with ancestors and support. So even doing things like what we call compassionate depossession, which is some of Betsy Bergstrom's work, and that's helping any attachments that might be connected to somebody unknowingly or without consent, and clearing that out and supporting the attached being as well to get the care that they need and go where they need to go. Um, so psychopomp depossession, mediumship, uh, extractive type work, shamanic work primarily, which is what I've been doing for about 16 years. So it's a blend of things, and you and I are both brain spotting trainers. We know too the power of brain spotting and how brain spotting gives us access to these, can give us access to these other realms because we're going into the deeper parts of the psyche where connections are, not only to the deeper parts of our own beings, but simultaneously out there. It's brain spotting with the eye positions to access lineage, access gifts, access burdens, um, doing group brain spotting together to charge that up. Yeah, there's a lot.
It's a portal. The brain spot's a portal into all of that. It's just a matter of how open our systems are to accessing.
Yeah, agreed.
Mhm. Mhm.
Agreed. Oh,
Yeah. No, and I'm hearing you say, you're going with what is emerging, in the moment,
yeah.
and then you're following that, which is what we talk about in brain spotting too, following in the tail of the comet.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. The frame shapes itself,
Yes. Yes.
as people gather and themes come to light. And I'm also really a big believer in group work and group healing. Uh, our wounds are relational primarily. And so they're going to heal, in relationship. And for the longest time, I've felt like an outsider, and because of being an immigrant and lots of other things. But I find that group work is high risk and high reward. So uh, the future, I think, is going to be collective, healing as a collective. And we don't have time to do that one on one.
Because there's so many suffering and so many in need. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a return to the communal,
Mhm.
the return to
Mhm.
recognizing that we are never designed to be separate from tribe and community.
Right. I mean, talking about how our system is wired, right? We are neurobiologically wired for connection, but we've mucked it up because of, just our own projections, our own wounds and betrayals. And, you know, my hope for the earth is at some point, instead of learning through pain, we can learn through joy. That would be really nice to have some learning through joy instead of all this pain stuff that's going on, right?
I would like to nurture that seed.
That's, yes.
Yeah, be nice.
But, there's a reason why we have to revisit the pain. There's something going on collectively that we're not getting the message. So, is there anything more that I haven't asked you that you think would be good for our listeners to know? on this deep depth conversation that we're having.
Mm, don't be afraid of your own depth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm learning. That my own depth used to frighten me. It still does, actually, to see. Uh, and it's a level of sensitivity that's actually quite difficult to manage in a body. So uh, that's a learning process for me. But the gifts have been immense. The ability
Mhm.
to be really rooted in sky and earth. It's like really powerful. And so we're not we're not often given space to explore our deepest selves.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with you. That is where the beautiful gifts come from. I think to truly be free,
Mhm.
to really look and be authentic with what is coming, to not have any judgment and just have, the collective be able to hold the space and let what needs to emerge is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my invitation, is to give yourself permission to explore a deeper place inside.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on here and sharing. And we'll make sure that all your stuff is in our show notes so that people can reach you and get to know you because there's lots of wonderful services that you offer. So thanks for coming and sharing today.
For having me.
Yeah.